Did Donovan Mitchell drop a hint that he might have eyes for South Beach? We get into the latest rumors about Donovan Mitchell's future, if the Heat is a realistic destination, and what it would all cost. All of that and more coming up on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, we have a special debate edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg, and with me is David Ramil. However you may be joining us on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Let's just jump right into the latest regarding Donovan Mitchell, whose Utah Jazz are in a free fall in the West, having lost 6 of their last 10. And now the rumors are percolating that Donovan Mitchell might be the next star on the move this offseason. Bill Simmons said Monday that he wouldn't be surprised if Donovan Mitchell asked out of Utah. Tim McMahon on the Lowe Post last week saying, quote, other teams have been planning to make a run at Donovan Mitchell all season long, end quote. This is sort of the same quote we got earlier in the season from Sports Illustrated's Howard Beck. And then to add to this mystery, Donovan Mitchell wore a Miami Hurricanes pair of shoes during a recent game, then posted that image to Instagram following the game. That prompted fans in Miami to wonder how much love Donovan Mitchell has for South Florida. David, what do you make of all this noise? Do you expect Mitchell to be on the move this summer?
From what we've heard, it seems like things have run their course there, right? That seems to be the constant theme about analyzing Mitchell, is that something's not working in Utah, whether it's him, whether it's Rudy, whether it's a combination of both, whether it's the roster. I don't think anyone's laid the blame at Quinn Snyder's feet, but it certainly feels like this is just a team that's reached their point where they can't get past. And I was bullish on Utah's chances early in the season. I know they've had injury issues. Things haven't gelled. They haven't had players step up the way that they expected them to. Having said that, they were a team that were kind of poised for that next leap. I thought that they were kind of akin to Milwaukee, and that was a group that had reached their point. Everybody was questioning Mike Budenholzer, whether or not he was a great coach, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, well, you wind up coaching them to an NBA Finals, and all those rumors are quashed. I think something similar was happening in Utah, and I thought they were going to take the leap this year. Apparently not. And from what we've seen from Donovan, he seems like he's pretty frustrated that things just aren't working on the defensive end. From the offensive perspective, they're not getting the wins. There's not enough evolution from the roster as it's currently comprised. So, yeah, I think things have run their course there. And I think Donovan, if not necessarily willing to ask for a trade, we'll see what happens, whether or not they decide that he or Rudy Gobert is a player worth building around in the future.
Well, what could end up happening here too is, and this has been talked about, but if you trade one, you might as well just trade the other one, because you're not going to get, if you trade Rudy Gobert, you're not getting the defensive anchor back. If you trade Donovan Mitchell, you're probably not getting a better player back for Donovan Mitchell. And so at that point, you're entering a rebuild stage anyway. And so you might as well just trade both of them and blow this whole thing up. And there's a lot of interesting places that Rudy Gobert could go. I think Atlanta would be really interesting for him. Maybe Dallas has been mentioned as a possible landing spot. But in terms of Donovan Mitchell, I mean, how many teams would want Donovan Mitchell? I mean, a lot, right? 25, 26, 20. Like,
I know
a lot of. Well, this is what makes this Instagram post so interesting. Donovan Mitchell has no ties to the Miami Hurricane organization. His only tie to Miami is that he works out here in the offseason. Maybe there's a second tie to Miami, given that Dwayne Wade is a part owner of the Utah Jazz and what Dwayne Wade means to the organization, and how Dwayne Wade has at least reportedly sort of taken on a mentorship role over Donovan Mitchell. We could talk about that and how upset Jazz fans will be if Donovan Mitchell ends up with the Miami Heat. And it's like, oh, Dwayne Wade just planted here all along, just the guy that, the Heat never really offered him a serious ownership stake so that they can move him so that he would take the one with Utah and then get Donovan Mitchell routed to the Heat, which would be an incredible conspiracy theory and one of my favorites, even better than the Jimmy Butler stuff, but and the Kyle Lowry stuff. But it's tough. We can talk about trade packages in a little bit, but in terms of whether or not Donovan Mitchell would want to be with the Heat, I mean, it's not easy for him to get moved anyway. He's going to be entering. He's got 4 more years left on this extension that he just signed. It's not like players can't be moved that just signed extensions. We just saw this with Ben Simmons, but that was a very specific and unique example in which James Harden, who only had a year left, was able to make his way over to Philadelphia, and Ben Simmons was the price tag on that. But
Right.
I'm not going to put anything. I'm not going to say anything's impossible because stars kind of pick their places now. They pick their spots. And if Donovan Mitchell just makes life hell for the Utah Jazz, then maybe they would just trade him. Or maybe, like I said, if they just determine, well, this isn't going to work anyway, we might as well just blow the whole thing up, then maybe they would be better off trading Donovan Mitchell at 25 years old and just getting a haul of picks and assets and all this stuff that they can sort of refix the entire organization around. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a interesting question from Utah's perspective. I know that there's frustration with Mitchell's style of play and things of that sort, but by and large, I think, and I was asked this question in regards to Dame Lillard recently. It's like, would you want to trade Dame Lillard for the package of picks that he would receive? And we're talking about Dame freaking Lillard here, one of the top 75 players in NBA history. And to me, I was just like, you can only hope to hit on the draft and potentially get a player of Lillard's magnitude. And I feel kind of similarly to Donovan Mitchell. Like, I mean, I know that he's frustrated. I know the team is frustrated, etc. But do you really want to blow things up so quickly and just say, this is it? We can't move any further. We can't fix this. I don't know. I know from the Heat perspective, I think he'd certainly be a great fit here. I think there's a culture fit. I think he would love it. We've always thought that he was a lot like Dwayne Wade in his style of play, just a guy more willing to shoot the three early on in his career because of the evolution of the game, et cetera. But between the long limb nature, the somewhat shorter stature, the freakish athleticism, et cetera, there's a lot of comparisons there to Dwayne that make a lot of sense. And I think, he would be a great fit here. And I can only imagine Dwayne talking to him about what he did in Miami and things of that sort, and that kind of appealing to him. Now, one of the things that Brian Windhorst, I believe, has reported is that market size might have some interest or might play a factor in Mitchell determining whether or not what team he would like to play for. He's from the New York area.
Yes.
I know that there's an allegiance there too, to some degree. But, I mean, Miami is a pretty big market team. At the same time, I mean, I know Utah's a small market team. And it's a small area. It's a different type of environment for your typical NBA player. But, he's always talked glowingly about Salt Lake City, about the Utah Jazz organization, that he played in Louisville, which wasn't exactly a thriving metropolis either. And so it was a lot of similarity. I remember talking to him as a rookie. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. But, one of the things that we should watch is whether or not he gets named to one of these all NBA teams, because he's got a really good statistical case to be at least third team, right? And Utah did not show up on the All-Star ballot at all. Like, Rudy Gobert should have been a starter, and Warriors fans voted Andrew Wiggins in over him. Like, Utah fans should be really disappointed with how they didn't back their dudes for the All-Star vote. Like, I know the Jazz are on a free fall now, but they were awesome at the start of the season, and Rudy Gobert should have been a starter, and he just didn't get the votes. Not even close. Right. And Donovan Mitchell right now, if he doesn't get that All NBA nod here, then he could be that's reason to look at a bigger market. Because if he was in New York or Miami or one of the LA or San Francisco or one of these other teams, then of course he would be on All NBA. He would be one of the biggest stars in the NBA. But right now, I think people who pay attention know that he's one of the most talented guards in the league.
Sure.
But I don't think his footprint is very large, right? And so I think this matters to a guy who's just signed his first extension and probably wants already looking ahead to maybe getting that other huge contract and not to mention with the winning and all the things that he wants to do there. And obviously that's not happening right now with Utah. So I could see it. New York is the name that everybody keeps throwing out. When you hear these rumors, other than Donovan Mitchell posting an image and wearing the Miami Hurricanes sneakers, there's not really been much tie to the Heat organization, other than the fact that we know that the Heat would probably be interested in some degree, right? Like, we know that they will at least circle that wagon, kick those tires, whatever. But New York has been a destination we've always heard with Donovan Mitchell. It's always been New York. And so should we just get into the trade packages now?
Well, I guess it involves Tyler Herro, right? I mean, that would almost assuredly be a big part of it.
Let's just say hypothetically that the Jazz decide, you know what, or for whatever reason, the Jazz are putting Donovan Mitchell on the trade block. They're making him available, whether or not he's asking for the trade or they're just deciding to blow it all up. I'm with you, by the way. I don't think they're going to trade Donovan Mitchell unless they absolutely have to. But, there's reporters saying that it's very likely to happen at this point, so we might as well take it seriously. The Knicks,
I think
obviously,
to that point, just so you just to kind of put a bow on it, I think some team would have to go in there and throw them like a monster offer, like a
yes.
really enticing package of players and draft picks and things of that sort. And I don't know Miami has that necessarily, although Tyler at the hub of that would probably be very enticing for Utah fans and for the organization in general. No, that's it. I think they'd have to be like kind of swayed into it, and then from
It would
that
be an
point, it would
Anthony
have to
Davis
be
type package, wouldn't it? It would
yeah,
be
yeah,
just every first rounder, every pick swap that you're allowed to offer, and just a bunch of young players who you could, as an organization, you're trading a superstar, and you'd be like, well, at least we have a bunch of young players that we could try to build on with, and all that stuff, and try to at least you would have to offer some sort of direction at the very least. And so,
yeah.
let's start with what the Knicks package would be. All right, you know what? Let's start with the Heat package. You're right, Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, right, for salary matching purposes. If you really wanted to get into salary, like like you'd have to throw in like an Omer Yurtseven or a Gabe Vincent or something like that, one of those $2 million type of dollar contracts. So let's just call it Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, and Omer Yurtseven.
Yeah.
But that Yurtseven spot, just swap it for whatever the Jazz want, because they would be able to have their say on that. And then the Heat would trade every first-round pick that they have and every pick swap. That's what we're talking about. And we know that they unlocked the 2027 pick from OKC when they moved Casey Okpala at the deadline. So now they have that 2027 pick. They can move the 2029 pick. They can also move their 2023 pick, I believe, or one of these picks. They could pick. I know there's a pick swap thing happening this summer, so they could technically choose for the Jazz and then move that player after the draft. So they could basically move like 4 first rounders and then a bunch of pick swaps. But it would be like that'd be all your picks sort of at the Jazz's disposal until 2029. Right. And I do think it would take that type of package. Like maybe you can negotiate, you know what, let's not do the pick swap in 2028 or something like that. But basically that's the package. How does that compare to the Knicks if they put RJ Barrett on the table?
I think pretty good. I mean, I certainly am a believer in Tyler Herro. I think that's pretty obvious. I think Barrett sounds nice, but whatever the Knicks have, I think is equal to, or maybe even lesser in value to what Miami could offer.
Well, they have way more first rounders because they have the Dallas picks too. From they still have the Dallas 2023 first, and no limitations on their first. Like they own all of their first round picks.
I know our listeners and viewers probably don't care, but would that move make the Knicks better? Like before we even get into the obvious,
it would give them a star. It would give them a star.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Make them
but
better.
Like mortgaging their future and everything else like that to trade RJ Barrett plus whatever other players you do in order to acquire Mitchell. Are they a playoff team? Like, I mean, it's still kind of built around Julius Randle.
Probably a play-in team, right? Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, look, I don't want to get into the business of trying to fix the Knicks. Like that. That's
right. That's not our concern. Well, let's flip it. Like from a Heat perspective, then. Is this a deal that Miami would be willing or interested in making? And I think we've kind of been hung up on that because we're both bullish on what Tyler can do. We're also both bullish on what Donovan Mitchell does and what he brings to the table. Yet the risk and what you're giving up.
No, you're absolutely right. And I want to touch on that. But to have that conversation, you sort of first have to have the conversation of, all right, well, what would it cost to get us in the door, right? What does it cost to get us at the table to acquire a Donovan Mitchell? And then at that point, once you know what the cost is, then you determine whether or not the price is worth it. I think that Knicks offer is better. I think it's straight up better because I know you're talking about just first round picks in the abstract here, but a Knicks first round pick, like you said, like the Jazz know, hey, we'll give you Donovan Mitchell and you're still maybe a play-in team, where if we give the Heat Donovan Mitchell, now we're talking about a team that can win the finals. We'd much rather have these picks from the Knicks coming over that are all probably going to be in the lottery versus number 29 in perpetuity, So, that Knicks package is way better if I'm the Jazz. It's not even close. Like, we could get into, like, Tyler Herro versus RJ Barrett. We did the redraft a couple weeks ago, but, like, that's not even – just give me a young guard who I could start to build around, and then all these picks. And these are the picks that I want, not the Heat picks. But and Miami teams, like, because this isn't a team where this isn't a case where Donovan Mitchell can call a shot. Like, if he wants to go to the New York Knicks, like, good luck, man, I guess. But, like,
that's fine, yeah.
Who's to stop the Oklahoma Thunder? Being like, hey, all these draft picks that we have, now we envision Donovan Mitchell and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as that backcourt of the future. Like,
Oh,
here's like a million picks. We literally have a million picks that we can't use. Here's a million picks. They're all
wow.
awesome. It's like Donovan Mitchell can't call a shot. He'd be like, if you don't want to be here, too bad. You're still under contract for 4 years.
Right.
Toronto,
Right.
they can offer Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. They have their own picks. Like, I mean, we could go down the list of what offered, but like even a team like Toronto, where you're like, wow, they got a bunch of young players. Like, they would still be like, Donovan Mitchell, you got to at least think about it. Like, Donovan Mitchell's that level of player. Like,
Miami with Tyler Hero, it has a package of that's what, top 5 or top 10 in a response for a potential offer for Donovan Mitchell.
if there's 20 teams putting an offer in for Donovan Mitchell, I think the Heat they would not be in the best
Half.
6 or 7. Yeah, they wouldn't.
But still in the
And
top
that has
half.
nothing to do with Tyler Hero. It's just like there's a lot of good young guards,
Draft capital,
in the
yeah.
NBA. Like, even the Warriors could just be like, you know what? We got a nice young guard in Jordan Poole. Also, here's Jonathan Kuminga. Here's James Wiseman. Here's Moses Moody. Here's our first round picks. Like, that's a better package than what the Heat can put together.
Hmm.
You know? So I don't know.
I don't like the fit there.
It would have to be. I mean, I don't think the Warriors would do that, but who knows? But what if they trade Klay Thompson? I don't know. But
That's brutal.
no, that was more of a joke for any Warriors fans that might still be watching me. That was something that got me in trouble when I was covering the Warriors. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the Heat could pull it off. But then again, maybe Donovan Mitchell does get to call a shot. I don't know how this stuff works anymore, David. I really don't. I wish I had a better answer. It's like stars get to figure. They make their way to places.
Like I get that, but in both scenarios involving a James Harden trade, like the package was somewhat, and I hate using package, as a terminology here, but it was commensurate with what you're getting back. Like, obviously, you're always going to be losing out whenever you trade a superstar at their peak, and that's certainly where Harden was when he was traded from Houston. They didn't get something, of equal value back, but there was nothing that was going to be provided of equal value in response. And I mean, the Brooklyn trade, that made some sense. You're getting an all NBA type defender, all player,
Jury's
and
still
Ben
out on that.
Simmons. Yes.
Right?
I think
we don't know what Ben Simmons is going to look like, and Harden hasn't been like awesome for Philadelphia either. Like, I mean,
right.
But to your, like, you rarely do get a package commensurate of the player. If you're the team sending out the superstar, you're always getting like 2 cents on the dollar. You know what I mean? Right. So, but you're just trying to make up for anything. But this is the rare case where Donovan Mitchell has so many years left on his contract that maybe the Jazz can call their shots if they were to agree. Let's answer the question you asked earlier to wrap this up. If you're the Heat, and let's just, for whatever reason, Donovan Mitchell, he's calling his shot somehow. The NBA works in strange ways, and the Heat are in a position to pull the trigger on it. Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, Omer Yurtseven, and every draft pick you have until 2029, until you are literally allowed to trade them to the limit. Do you do it?
I hate even answering this in the middle of like what could potentially be a title run for Miami. And
right.
I think Miami does. I don't think
if they don't win the finals.
If they don't win the finals this year, yes.
If they do win the finals.
Even if they do it. I really do. I think that, I mean, unless Tyler, what would it take for Tyler to be considered superstar level performance, capable of what we've seen, to match what we've seen from Mitchell and his playoff experiences, like 40-point outings, 50-point outings, things of that sort, like
25 points on efficient shooting and not getting destroyed defensively the way that he did in the first round against the Bucks last year. Like, holding up his own defensively so that the Heat know, you know what, maybe this guy's a starter next year. I think that's what it would take.
Yeah, but even a starter, like, again, that's like we've seen Mitchell put up 50-something point games for the Utah Jazz. Like, he carries that team offensively, and we've seen him go explosive. Yes, you're going to have plenty of nights where he's 3 of 18 and things of that sort, and that's abysmal shooting. But that's kind of what you live with. I don't know. I think Miami always wants to acquire a superstar. If you can get one at his prime at 27, like, yeah, 25. You can build a 25. Sorry, I don't know why I said 27. 25, like 3 years older than Tyler. In the next 3 years, can Tyler reach where Donovan Mitchell is? That's another question, though. Like, that is a potentially. That's a tough question.
It is a different question, and I think you and I are really bullish on Tyler Herro.
Yes,
I know that he's obviously impressed the Heat with the leap that he has made, but we don't really know what the Heat think his ceiling is versus also the ceiling that they believe that Donovan Mitchell has. And we know that they were really interested in Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell, of course, went 13 in that draft. The Heat were picking at 14 and took Bam Adebayo. But they love Donovan Mitchell in that draft. And so you've got to imagine that they think that anything Donovan Mitchell has done in the NBA has only strengthened their love for Donovan Mitchell, right? He is definitely not disappointed since getting into the NBA. So I kind of think I'm with you. If you win the finals, I don't know that you can mortgage the future in that way because I don't know that the motivation would be there because Pat Riley calls that shot, right? And if you win the championship, that's sort of the goal, right? Isn't everything we've heard from Pat Riley wins the championship and then retires? Like, do you mortgage the future? And I don't know if you can even call it mortgage in the future because, like you said, you're getting a 25-year-old superstar, but just no draft picks, like that's it. Just no picks. This is the team. And maybe they think, you know what, we don't need picks. We'll just keep going. We'll get a new Max Strus every year and we'll be fine. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I kind of think I might be with you, but you're right. It's hard to know what they think Tyler Herro's ceiling is versus what Donovan Mitchell's ceiling is and how much success they ultimately have in the playoffs. Look, it's all information that will ultimately add up. We don't even know if this is an option for them, but it is going to be a wild summer. Donovan Mitchell will not be the only star on the move if he's on the move. We know that it's the NBA. Tons of stuff happens every offseason. And you know that the Miami Heat, they'll at least be rumored to be involved. And so we'll talk about it here on Locked On Heat as we go on. And of course, we have one more week of regular season games. We got a big week here on the show. Katie Heindl joining the show to talk about the scene live in Toronto. We will have that for you soon. Recap of the Charlotte Hornets game coming up later in the week. We will have our All-NBA teams later in the week. We have Michael Pina from Sports Illustrated later in the week. So make sure that you tune in, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts for now. That'll wrap it up. Remember to like and subscribe Locked On Heat on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Comment, leave a 5-star rating. Reach us on Twitter at Locked On Heat. And thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On NBA podcasts. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free. It's available wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for joining me, David.
It's all about the U.S.
That's right.